A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to some more good old films I should have talked about years ago. Because nowadays, let's just get on going with some more content production, because I really gotta say, I'm glad to have some extra free time around here with all this. So now we got number 65 in this series. Triple Frontier is pretty much right there, looking at its best. And you know what? This is something that I've been wanting to talk about for a while now, because I was only able to watch it on Netflix, of course. As it is another Netflix release that I might as well talk about now. So, I gave it another watch, it's fresh in my mind. And the thing is, I consider it to be pretty well made for the time period it was released in. It's yet another big film in 2019. Being a Netflix release though, in accordance to what most theatrical releases were receiving at the time, especially when you take a look at how huge the MCU managed to get by 2019, and with many other films apparently earning billions of dollars in the box office. It really does go to show we've had quite a big run in recent years with cinematic history. But now that we're pretty much seeing a huge dissipation of it, maybe for the right reasons, it's good to know that we do have our own personal movie theaters in the form of different streaming platforms by our sides at all times. And so, it's my pleasure to pretty much just talk about Triple Frontier as it is. It's an action heist film starring the likes of Garrett Hedlund, Pedro Pascal, Ben Affleck, Charlie Hunnam, and Oscar Isaac. And let me tell you, I know all 5 of these guys very well. So, I was certainly surprised to see them all together at once. Almost like it was another one of those films way back in the day, or many films back in the day that featured a whole lot of well-known actors, at least by what we know of so well today. But I tell you, when it comes to getting to know these actors one by one, they each have their own pretty impressive resume when it comes to acting. Charlie Hunnam, for instance, I remember pretty darn well in Pacific Rim. And then you have Pedro Pascal, whom I've gotten to know very well, especially with The Mandalorian, obviously. Not to mention WW84. And we also can't forget about how Oscar Isaac was Poe Dameron from the Star Wars series, most notably during the most recent trilogy. And then we also can't forget about how Ben Affleck was, at the time, the DCEU's version of Batman. But I've also talked about Ben Affleck's appearance in The Way Back, which, to my knowledge, has been the most recent film that Affleck has starred in. So that's pretty much what I got to know about so well. Garrett Hedlund, though, was a pretty special case, because this is someone who's been in Tron Legacy, probably one of the best films that I've come to know about in 2010. And not to mention many other somewhat known obscure things out there, like Pan, Troy, and Aragon. And not to mention Unbroken. And as a matter of fact, that's actually what could be next in line. So expect to see more things go into play. I might even go ahead and marathon through it the rest of the day. So, you know what? Expect Unbroken to show up after this, along with something else, maybe. Until then, though, let's just say that this film already has quite a big kick for having 5 well-known names in acting, especially throughout what we've come to know about throughout the 2010s, the 2000s, the 1990s, etc., etc. And how could you ever forget the fact that, well, this is in fact meant to be an action film with guns blazing, heists taking place throughout all of the countries that are way down in the South. But the most important thing to simply show up on something like this, to talk about at least, is the fact that this film gives us a big perspective. How does the personalities of one Charlie Hunnam, one Pedro Pascal, one Ben Affleck, one Garrett Hedlund, and one Oscar Isaac turn out to be when they're all mashed together into one unique team of soldiers that intend to go out there all on their own without having any backup? Well, the truth is, it seems to be quite an adventure. Right down there in the jungles, where they eventually stumble upon a ginormous stash of cash, hidden inside the walls of a nearly abandoned house that was in fact occupied by certain groups of mercenaries. And these five really do play up the angle of action so well. Who would have thought that these five would have done so unbelievable in terms of their performance? It's just crazy getting to know the fact that a lot of these films' effects these days seem to be way better in comparison to what a lot of old school effects were like. But at the same time, it does show that we're not really seeing a lot of things that are new. And sure, a lot of things seem to be groundbreaking at first, but yet we might look back on them one day only to find they may not really be the kind of films that we used to know back then. So, I will say that for Triple Frontier, a film like this that involves a lot of gritty action, some slow-paced things out there, quite a lengthy process to get their mission done. They've had to make a lot of sacrifices along the way, a lot of run-ins with mercenaries of all sorts. From the fact that they steal a helicopter carrying a giant amount of cash, to the point where they have to throw a lot of duffel bags worth of the cash over the mountaintops, and then at a point where Ben Affleck's character gets shot to death, unexpectedly. That right there was quite a devastation. Who would have thought that Ben Affleck would be killed so easily when the guy's already shown a lot of amazing courage and determination? Well, I guess we'll never really know. I can't really say that that's a flaw though, because it seems to be a bit misguiding to how I see this film as a whole. But anyways, when checking out the ending to this film though, it's just what you'd expect. They get away with some of the cash that they had grabbed from that house, and they end up, well, getting away with only a few people left alive, most of whom remain injured. But in the end, it does seem like they do just that. They get their mission done. That's pretty much that. Triple Frontier is probably not necessarily at the highest that of all things out there seem to meet all expectations, but it's still a pretty satisfying thing to have. A lot of well-known actors are put in here that I could just name them off the top of my head and go hardly anywhere else. And then, of course, you really got to remember the intense action that plays up, the emotional angles that are bent between different characters, and the interactivity that takes place. It's just astoundingly well choreographed, pretty much. So it does show that you can love most modern films, even if they might not seem as appealing as classics. So, by all means, maybe take a look at it if you have the time to do so. Well, let's go give it a score. 7.9 out of 10. Probably going nowhere higher than that, but at least it is almost in line with most other ratings out there. So I have a mere full agreement, in a way, with some people. But yet I still do have a lot that I will want to talk about with other titles as much as I can do so. And so, well, that's just pretty much what I got to say about that. But if you want to see more of that on my channel, then make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.